I'm Stephen John Drew from the official GonnaGeek.com podcast, a proud member of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the one you're listening to now. The opinions expressed are those of each individual. Check out other geeky podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
Stand by for a brand new episode of All Things Good and Nerdy.
That's right, we're back. Welcome everyone to episode 575 of the All Things Good and Nerdy podcast. It's recorded on Thursday, October 24th, 2024. My name is Chris. Normally I'd be joined by one, if not both, of the usual band of misfits, Mr. Willie Nelson or Mr. Anthony Bachman, but it is just me this week. Why is that the case? Well, let's pull back the curtain a little bit. Let's talk about what's going on right now. We've had some weird difficulties scheduling podcasts and stuff lately. So the schedule is going to be a little sporadic here in the near future. We're probably going to be winging it a little bit over the next couple weeks. Now, why is that the case? Well, Bachman is part of his new job. He's going to be working some night shifts. And during that same time, Willie's indulging in some Thursday night magic. So during that time period, we're going to do a mix of me and some guests, maybe some pre-recorded best of kind of things. And we're going to figure out what the right way is going forward, whether we stick with Thursday evenings to do stuff, whether we shift to another night, whether we do it during the day on the weekends again like we used to. I'm not 100% sure what path we're going to take, but we are going to take a path of some kind and figure something out like that. But in the short term, we want to make sure you guys had some content. If you noticed last week, we did live stream because it was necessary to do so. We did re-air the interview we had just done with Sean Pryor for Kaiju Unleashed. Why did we do that? Well, because the book comes out this week, I believe, or excuse me, next week. Let's get Sean a little more press. Let's talk about a book that we're really interested in, and let's spread the word. So we did do a rebroadcast of that last week, and then the week before that, I had no voice. I was sick. I was under the weather, and thankfully my boys Bachman and Willie were able to pick up the slack to do the show without me, and we put out a short show that next day. So while we took a week off, it's sort of invisible to folks unless you were just downloading from the RSS feed. There has been video content that has been published. So what does that mean for today? Well, for today, I'm going to do something I haven't done on a podcast in 5+ years. I might be rusty here. The elusive solo podcast. That's right. We're going to shoot for that. For those that are unaware, years upon years ago, I used to have a podcast called Nerd Alert News. It was a show where I tried to do every few days, kind of run down what some of the most interesting nerdy news was that I had seen out there, share it with folks, kind of do commentary. It was kind of my take on Tom Merritt's Daily Tech News Show. He did it with tech. I was doing it with like comic books and video games and nerd TV and stuff like that. It was not sustainable. Working a full-time job, having a life, trying to put together scripts, record a podcast for 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week on that, on top of my other podcasts. I couldn't do it. Gave me a great appreciation for the fact that folks like Tom are able to do that, like 5 days a week for Daily Tech News Show. I don't know how he has the energy, how he gets all that stuff written, but I do greatly appreciate the fact he did it. So it's been a long time since it's just been me doing a podcast. And I do know that may not be everyone's cup of tea. If it's not, you're not going to offend me if you stop the episode right now and be like, I'll come back for episode 576. I get it. It's not exactly what you're used to on this show, but we're going to try it this week. That being said, we're probably not going to do the typical hour to an hour and a half long show because I'll be honest, I don't have that much content put together for it because it's tough to carry that on your own. I enjoy doing this show with Willie and with Bachman because it's just kind of a time that I get to link up with my friends each week and BS and talk about cool stuff. And the nice thing is we get to take along listeners and viewers for the ride. I'll be honest, sometimes I'll be recording the podcast and I'll realize, oh wait, we're recording a podcast, not just having some fun going back and forth. That's something fun. That's something enjoyable. And don't worry, we'll be bringing that back to you guys here in the future. But for now, it is just me. I've got a couple news stories that we've talked about in our group chat that we have for the All Things Good and Nerdy podcast There's also some stuff I may take off the Gonna Geek Discord because, hey, now's my chance to plug that Discord, gonnageek.com/Discord. That's where we talk about a lot of different subjects. It's where we have a channel for the podcast itself. Really do encourage you guys to check that out. But for now, that's enough pre-show or introductory rambling for me. I'm going to ramble a little bit more after the news of the week.
Live from the ATGN studios on the internet, it's the news of the week.
That's right. We're into the news of the week. It's that part of the show where normally all of us share with you some of the more interesting, geeky, and dirty things that we've been talking about, we've been seeing, and share with you guys to get you interested in them. This week, it's some stuff that I found. It's some stuff that the guys sent to me on chat, and I'll make sure I credit things appropriately when I can remember who sent it to me. So all that being said, we'll get started with the first story right now. So this first news story comes courtesy on Willie D. Nelson. He did share it in our group chat. There's a lot of folks talking about the Penguin show on HBO Max right now. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet because I don't have an HBO Max subscription. I don't know about the rest of the guys, but while people were talking about the Penguin, we did get some interesting new news when it comes in regards to some Batman comic book stories. It was announced this last week that a sequel to one of the most well-known collection of books, Batman Hush, is coming out. So we have a Batman Hush 2 officially coming out. Writer Jim Lee is returning to direct the story in that. He'll be joined by other folks like Jeff Loeb, Scott Williams, and Alex Sinclair. I assume Jim will probably also be doing some pencils in there as well. We don't know what all is going to be going on. Hush sets up a lot of interesting things that have become part of the Batman mythos. What we do know is there will be a prelude story to Hush 2 that debuts in Justice League Unlimited #1 and then in March 2025, Hush 2 releasing sometime around that time frame. We don't know when in the month of March, but if you look at that, we're like 5 months away from a sequel to Batman Hush, and no one had any idea. It was kept quiet. I, for one, pretty excited to see that happen. When I first started dating my now wife, she had a passing interest in comic books. I read a ton of comic books. I got tons of trade paperbacks on the shelf. And one of the things we came to find out is she really enjoyed Batman. And I was like, well, there's some great comics you should read. And she goes, well, what are some of those comics? And I ended up buying a stack of trade paperbacks I didn't own on top of some that I already did, because that's what she said she wanted to try out. And I think one of the first ones she read was Batman Hush, and she loved it. And I was like, ooh, I might have set the bar a little too high for all the rest of these books you're going to be reading, because Hush is one of the great stories in Batman lore. Some of the ones I enjoy are not necessarily some of the most popular ones out there, but I'm excited to see this happen, in part because I enjoyed it, also in part because it's one of the first comic books that my wife read, and I look forward to being able to hand her a copy of Hush 2 and be like, hey, look what's here, because I haven't told her they're making a sequel yet, and she doesn't really traffic in the comic book news websites or anything like that, so she very well may not know that there's a sequel to Hush coming out here in just a few months. So thank you, Willie, for bringing that story to my attention. I think you guys are going to notice we're going to be staying pretty comic booky and superhero-y for today's stuff. This next story comes courtesy of Mr. Anthony Bachman, who had shared it in our group chat, or I shared it. We both shared it around the same time as each other because I think we saw the story at about the same time. So I'm going to give Bachman credit, but it very well could be joint credit. But who knows? It doesn't really matter. What matters is discussing it, and I look forward to getting the guys' opinion on it when they're back. But as you guys know, Spider-Man 2, a game I've really enjoyed. Bachman hasn't had a chance to play it yet, I don't believe. It's still on his list to play, but Willie and I played it a lot. The guys kind of made fun of me because, like, well, I don't know if I'm going to buy a PS5 for it or not. And like, well, you bought a PS4 for Spider-Man, which is accurate. I was lucky enough to win a PS5 in a whatnot drawing on Danhausen, who's a professional wrestler's stream. So once I got that, I, of course, decided I had to buy Spider-Man 2. I loved the game. There was a leak a while back that hit Insomniac Hard, and there was a lot of information that got mined out of that leak that seemed to indicate there could be some more story content coming to Spider-Man 2. Yeah, that appears not to be the case. There's a story over on Games Radar where we got it from. I'll just read part of it here. If you'd been holding out hope for Spider-Man 2 DLC, you might want to let out the breath you've been keeping in. Buried in the announcement of the game's new PC port, Insomniac has confirmed that no more story content is planned. In the announcement blog, they stated, "While we have no additional story content planned for Marvel Spider-Man 2, we're delighted to bring our previously released post-launch content to the PC version, including new game plus, new suits, color variants, photo mode features, and more." So straight from the horse's mouth there, Insomniac is saying, we don't have plans for DLC, which is kind of a bummer because the DLC in Spider-Man 1 was really fun. They had a lot of DLC that really expanded the story, set up things for Spider-Man 2, and I'm just kind of bummed to see it not happening. It's also really surprising because it looked like when one of the game's debug menus were accessible in a previous version of the game, that there was stuff there that kind of hinted at some of the storyline content, story-based DLC that could be coming. But my guess would be a lot of that planning probably got flipped upside down rather, when the Insomniac leaks happened last year. They had to gather, figure out what they actually need to do, probably put more staff towards working on the Wolverine game they've got coming. And it seems like not getting any more DLC content, but we do have a PC version coming. So when that drops on January 30th, maybe it opens doors for people to mod in some stuff. I'm not quite sure how that will work there. If I had to hazard a guess, and this is not my unique guess, I've seen plenty of hot takes like this on threads and Reddit, is that while they've canceled the DLC content for Spider-Man 2, it doesn't necessarily mean the content they've been planning isn't going to happen. So what does that mean? There's been rumors that they might do a standalone / spin-off Venom game with Harry as Venom. I'm not sure what's going to happen there. So we could see that. We could see them spin off and do another Spider-Man 3 game or a Spider-Man Miles Morales game like we saw the previous version. My guess is the DLC plans they have, while they're not happening as part of Spider-Man 2, they very well could happen as, say, Spider-Man 2.5, similar to how we had the Miles Morales Spider-Man game that was effectively Spider-Man 1.5. Maybe we get something like that that fills the gap between Spider-Man 2 and 3, tells that story, gives us a chance to play more of the game. And I honestly do think we'll probably get the Venom spinoff, because the section of the game where you play as Venom, it's really fun. And I can't imagine they would have built it for a 30-minute portion of the game and never really go back to it again. They could take that same gameplay style and combat and things like that and just drop it into a Venom game that's built in a similar world and stuff like that. So my guess, we see something more Spider-Man related from Insomniac. While it may not be Spider-Man 2 DLC, it will be more Spider-Man content, probably new half iteration games, for lack of a better term, until we get to Spider-Man 3. Or maybe I'm just all wrong and all the work goes to working on Wolverine. Again, not the expert here. I just theorize and come up with ideas live on the internet. I got one more story for you guys. See, this is really hard to do solo because I've done 3 stories. We're 15 minutes in. This comes from the Gonna Geek Discord. My chance to plug it to you guys right now. If you want to come talk geek with pretty chill, laid back community, head on over to gonnageek.com/discord. That is the official Discord community of the Gonna Geek Network, which includes podcasts like All Things Good and Nerdy, Better Podcasting, the official Gonna Geek show. Oh, and also Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I will credit Michelle over on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. for bringing this story to my attention that came out of TV Line. It is posted in the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast channel, and discussion is going on in the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast channel about the topic. So if you want to chime in your opinions on it, please join the Discord, head on over to that channel. This last week was New York Comic Con. So comic book news, video game news, television news, streaming news, all sorts of stuff. If we roll back time a little bit to October 19th, we got some news about Daredevil Born Again. So why is this a big deal? For those that don't recall, the production until recently had been fairly troubled on Daredevil Born Again. It seemed like the old showrunners that were on board had kind of devised a story that a lot of people didn't like, and they hit the reset button on Daredevil Born Again. And by hit the reset button, I mean they literally took everything they'd filmed and they stopped. out and they brought in new showrunners and they consulted with the actors like Vincent D'Onofrio and Charlie Cox. And they brought in actors from the old Netflix show to reprise their roles. And they took what they had filmed, kept what worked for them, streamlined things down to make a smaller amount of episodes, and then continued filming again. So evidently something wasn't working there. They restarted it, and we knew that was going on. That's not the news part here. But a lot of us were scratching our heads going, man, if there's so much work while they're making the episodes, when are we going to see this show? Because I think when it was originally announced, it was supposed to be like 25, 26 episodes split over 2 seasons they'd committed to doing. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen. But what we did find out at New York Comic Con, Vincent D'Onofrio and Charlie Cox had a surprise appearance at the Marvel Fanfare panel, where we found out that on Tuesday, March 4th, 2025, Daredevil Born Again will premiere on Disney+. So we are again talking about another thing coming in March. Batman Hush 2 comes in March. Daredevil Born Again comes in March. I'm very excited. Very, very excited. It was supposed to originally premiere spring of this year. So yes, it is delayed because they did do their creative overhaul. And for reference, just to get an idea of while they were on their overhaul, they spent a fair number of months. They resumed filming the series on January 22nd in New York and then wrapped it up in April. So they are firmly in post-production right now. I would assume that this date is not going to slip a ton because they're in the post-production side of things now. They would not have announced a release date if they thought they weren't going to make it. I don't know. I'm excited. The Daredevil series on Netflix has been great. It seems like they're trying to capture some of the feeling and the look of the show that was on Netflix, which is on Disney Plus now. And one of the things that has me most excited is that Philip Silvera, the stunt coordinator for Marvel's Daredevil, reportedly returned to fill the role again on Born Again. So the lead stunt coordinator is back again on the Disney Plus series. So I will not be surprised to see some pretty intense fights and probably like one extended fight scene like we had in the hallway in season 1. A lot more of, another instance of those badass one take fights. I'm looking forward to it. We'll see what happens with it going forward. Cautious optimism from me. That being said, holy crap, I did 3 news stories in like 15 minutes here, guys. Solo podcasting is hard, you see. I don't have any tangents to go on, anyone to play off of, any BSing to go back and forth with. It's just me. So thank you for joining me for the news of the week. Before I shut this thing down, we are going to keep tradition alive. That final segment of what I'm into, it's my chance to share with you fine folks who are watching this just what kind of geeky and nerdy stuff I've been getting into, because you may want to go check it out yourself. So as I'm recording this right now, I just watched the first episode of the final season of What We Do in the Shadows last night. I did not realize that I think it was on Tuesday night that they dropped like the first 3 episodes of this final season. So I've only gotten a chance to watch 1 episode of it, and they haven't missed a step. It looks like it's going to be fun. I laughed a lot, and I cannot wait tonight with dinner to go dig into episodes 2 and 3. It is a great show. I'm really going to miss it when it leaves, but I'm also glad they are ending it on their own terms versus trying to stretch it out beyond belief and kind of watering it down into something that just wouldn't be as good. I'm okay with this. End on a high note. End how you choose to end it. Another thing I've been getting into, I don't normally talk about on this show, be like, hey, I picked up a book. You should read this book. But hey, I picked up a book. You guys should read this book. Again, we're talking about Batman yet again because I haven't talked about it enough already. But I don't remember if I'd mentioned on the show ages ago, and it was ages ago if I did mention it, that there was a new book that would be coming out that was entitled Batman Resurrection. It's written by John Jackson Miller. Why do I bring this up? Well, because if you didn't realize, this book just dropped, I want to say within the last week, and it is a direct sequel of Tim Burton's 1989 Batman movie. It takes place between Batman and Batman Returns. Like, this is months after the Joker died in Batman 89. I'm about 70, 80 pages in right now, but I've been enjoying it. You get some interesting scenes about the mindset of Bruce Wayne and how he differs between Batman and his own mind. And it just continues this world that I really enjoyed as a kid, which was the Batman 1989 movie, which, side note, I think might be one of the first movies I saw in a movie theater. It's one of my first memories in a movie theater, at least, is Batman 1989. But highly recommend it. Like I said, I'm only like 70, 80 pages into it right now, but it's a long one, 414 pages. I think I paid for my Kindle edition like $12 because it was on sale. A hardcover right now, it says on the Amazon, is $22.19 on sale. And I'm sure it'll be coming out in paperback later down the line if you're someone who predominantly buys books in paperback. I will not be peddling any spoilers or anything like that, but I have really enjoyed the book so far. As I get through finishing it, I will share more impressions with folks on the podcast about just what I liked without getting into spoilers and see whether my recommendation holds true for Batman Resurrection by John Jackson Miller. You can pick it up on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whatever books location you prefer. If you have a local bookstore that you like to buy books from, go pick it up from there. If you read ebooks, pick it up on Kindle, pick it up on whatever your preferred provider is. I recommend it, like I said, based off of my 70, 80 pages I've read so far. But that is what I've been getting into. Oh, I guess, and dabbling a little bit, playing some games, because I really needed to. I started replaying the Mass Effect trilogy again. I don't know why I did that, but I love those games, and they can consume hours upon hours upon hours of time. It continues to be one of the things I do recommend to folks if they do enjoy in-depth, immersive RPGs. These games had the BioWare magic. That being said, I have rambled enough. I did 20 minutes solo, which for someone who's rusty, having done a solo podcast, makes me feel good. Hopefully it was not me being too rambly or me being incoherent. I do appreciate you guys coming to join me for episode 575 of the All Things Good and Nerdy podcast. Like I said, we're trying to figure out and iron out what the schedule is going to be going forward. If you want to know what's going on, the best way to keep in touch, stay tuned to the ATGN channel on the Gonna Geek Discord, or don't follow me on Twitter because I don't use it, but follow me on Threads or I think Blue Sky, all of which I use the same username at the Chris Farrell. I will tell you, I don't go on Blue Sky very often. I kind of just established my name and moved on. I am on Threads a lot though, because I talk pro wrestling there with all of my other AEW sickos. And sicko is a term of endearment here before anyone gets mad at me. That being said, I'm going to shut this thing down. I do believe we will be back in some way, shape, or form next Thursday evening. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you all next week. Thanks for listening to this brand new episode of the All Things Good and Nerdy podcast. Don't forget, we'll be back next Sunday live at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central over at live.atgnpodcast.com, channel 3 of the Alpha Geek radio app, and over at our network home at gonnageek.com/live. If you have any feedback for the show, please contact us atgnpodcast@gonnageek.com, on our hotline number at 304-806-ATGN, or even better, go to Twitter and send us a message at ATGN Podcast. The music you've heard in this show is produced by Kevin MacLeod and can be found at incompetech.com.